Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking something absolutely wild, one of the most stunning political unravelings in modern British history. We're talking about the 2026 UK government crisis, plummeting polls, explosive scandals, and a totally open cabinet revolt. Let's dive right in. Think about it. How exactly does a historic 72-seat landslide majority just unravel in barely 24 months? Back in 2024, Keir Starmer's Labour Party won this massive mandate, completely ousting the Conservatives after 14 years in power. But jump forward to May 2026, and that seemingly unassailable fortress is literally crumbling before our eyes.
So here's our roadmap for today's Explainer. 1. From landslide to crisis. 2. The polls and policies. 3. The Mandelson vetting scandal. 4. Resignations and rebellion. And finally, 5. Who could lead next?
All right, let's jump straight into Section 1, from landslide to crisis.
Just look at this number for a second. -57. That was Prime Minister Keir Starmer's net favorability rating by January 2026. He officially became one of the least popular prime ministers on record. Think about that, turning a historic landslide winner into a deeply unpopular figurehead in less than 2 years. It's really unprecedented.
And the real-world consequences of that drop were just devastating. In the May 2026 local elections, Labour literally lost control of 35 councils and nearly 1,500 councillors. That's roughly 60% of their seats up for election just wiped out overnight. They were even relegated to third place in the Senate elections in Wales, which ended 100 years of Labour control there. The voters sent a definitive, absolutely brutal message.
Which brings us to Section 2, the polls and policies. Now, this wasn't just some vague feeling of dissatisfaction floating around. It was directly tied to some really controversial policies. The new government basically stepped on multiple political landmines, abolishing the winter fuel payment, raising employers' national insurance, and changing farmers' inheritance tax rules. Add in the, frankly, disastrous handling of the Birmingham bin strike, and you've got a perfect storm of policy backlash across completely different demographics.
And by January 2026, the polling picture from YouGov was, incredibly stark. A whopping 75% of the public held an unfavorable opinion of the Prime Minister. Roughly 2/3 of people believed the party was out of touch, weak, and totally failing to handle the cost of living crisis.
And this fracture really hit the party's core base hard. Just listen to this powerful quote from Sharon Graham, the General Secretary of Unite the Union. She said, "Workers are scratching their heads asking whose side are Labour on, because it certainly isn't workers." Unite even went so far as to cut their Labour affiliation funding by 40%. When your biggest union backers are openly questioning your loyalty, you know the crisis runs deep.
Okay, moving on to Section 3, the Mandelson vetting scandal. So let's walk through exactly how this single appointment completely unraveled the government's credibility. Back in December 2024, prominent New Labour figure Peter Mandelson is appointed U.S. ambassador. Fast forward to September 2025, and the Epstein files reveal deep ties, which leads to his dismissal. By February 2026, the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff and Director of Communications resign over the mess. But it's April 2026 that completely blows the doors off the crisis.
Then, in April, we get this shocking revelation. It turns out Mandelson had actually been denied security clearance way back in January 2025. Starmer claimed he simply wasn't told about it. The fallout from that? Well, Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper sacked a top civil servant, Ollie Robbins, who claimed he was put under serious pressure to push the appointment through anyway. It paints a truly damaging picture of the inner circle.
Naturally, the opposition completely seized on this chaos. Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch came out fiercely, stating the Prime Minister's position was, quote, untenable. And it wasn't just her. The leaders of the Liberal Democrats, Reform UK, the Greens, Plaid Cymru, and the SNP all called for his resignation. The political pressure reached an absolute boiling point.
That takes us right into Section 4, resignations and rebellion.
Following those disastrous local elections, the dam basically broke. Let's look at the timeline. May 9th, Catherine West threatens a challenge. May 11th, over 70 Labour MPs urge Starmer to quit. May 12th, 4 junior ministers resign. And then on May 14th, the heaviest blow lands as Health Secretary Wes Streeting resigns. It's an open, staggering, day-by-day revolt.
To really understand the internal frustration driving this massive exodus, listen to what Junior Minister Jess Phillips said when she resigned. The desire not to have an argument means we rarely make an argument, leaving opportunities for progress stalled and delayed. It perfectly highlights the deep dissatisfaction with the fundamental direction and energy of the leadership.
And then, of course, we get the massive bombshell of Wes Streeting resigning on May 14th. In a really scathing letter, the Health Secretary stated he had completely lost confidence in the leadership, calling it dishonorable and unprincipled to remain. When a highly prominent cabinet insider publicly blasts the Prime Minister on the way out the door, that signals a major structural collapse.
But it's important to note that the party is deeply divided right now, and not everyone is ready to just jump ship. Over 110 Labour backbenchers signed a letter stating it is, quote, not the time for a leadership challenge. They are actively defending the Prime Minister and arguing against destabilizing the government further. So there is this fierce, ongoing tug-of-war for the very soul of the party.
So, where do things go from here? Section 5. Who could lead next?
Right now, the two most prominent names in the mix represent completely different paths to power. On one side, you've got Andy Burnham, the highly popular mayor of Greater Manchester, often called the King of the North, but he's an outsider fighting to get back into Parliament through a by-election. On the other side, there's Wes Streeting, the recently resigned Health Secretary and a very ambitious Westminster insider. It's the popular regional heavyweight going up against the established cabinet operator.
But hey, the field goes far beyond just those two. You've got Al Carnes, a former Royal Marine who's seen as a real wild card. There's Angela Rayner, the former Deputy Prime Minister, who was recently cleared of a tax scandal. Plus, you have veteran figures like Ed Miliband or current Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy waiting in the wings. The sheer number of potential candidates really shows just how volatile this whole situation has become.
So, what does this all mean? With nearly 100 of his own MPs demanding he step down, a cabinet in open revolt, and the public deeply, deeply dissatisfied, is this the actual end of Keir Starmer's premiership? Or can he somehow weather this historic storm and reset his government? The analysis of this downfall has been rapid, fascinating, and honestly, pretty brutal. What you should definitely take away from this is just how shockingly fast political fortunes can turn. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep your eyes on the news because I promise you this drama is far from over.